afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
All right. This is the last session for the SharePoint conference, right? So thank you very much for being here. And with this session, I'm going to talk about getting started with Multi Geo Scenarios in SharePoint and OneDrive. I'm Sesha. I'm a principal PM manager for SharePoint and OneDrive team. I have here with me Adriana Wood.
Senior Program Manager for the SharePoint OneDrive team. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for attending the last session today.
So what we thought would be helpful to walk you through is to give you an idea on what is multi-geo and why multi-geo and what are the customer values that you get by deploying into multi-geo. And then also we'll get into how we have evolved our multi-geo journey, starting with OneDrive, Exchange, and now in SharePoint services as well. And then we have a lot of demos to show you. And if you have any questions, if you don't mind holding it at the very end, that will be helpful so that we can get through our demos, and then we'll take up more questions. And then the most important thing, we also have sunglasses for you, all of you. Yay, that's right. So before you head out, we have them in the front desk, so feel free to grab one or two when you're heading out, okay? Let's get going. So what is multi-geo? It is about enabling a single Office 365 tenant to span across multiple geographic regions and countries. And that's why we say it's geos. It's not just about regions or not just about countries. You can span the tenant across multiple geos itself. Now today, one of the constraints that we have in Office 365 is that the moment your tenant is provisioned in one location, let's say your tenant is provisioned in US, that's the only location where you can keep your data, right? We don't allow you to expand it to other geolocations. Now with this capability of multi-geo, a single tenant, an enterprise tenant, you can now expand into US, Europe, Asia Pacific, and so on. So for example, in this particular case, I have a Contoso Credit Bank as a multinational company. They are headquartered in North America. It's a central location, and that's where the majority of the operations happen. However, they also have satellite subsidiaries in Europe and Australia, and they want collaboration between their central headquarters users as well as with these satellite users in Europe as well as in Australia as well. But the important thing here is they need to keep the data in that corresponding country or the region itself. For example, in the European citizens' data, they need to keep them within the European soil in the data center in Europe itself. For Australian citizens, the same thing. They want to keep it within the Australian soil. Why that is the case? Because of the regulatory controls that are there in those regions or in the countries itself. Okay? Now the second important point is why multi-geo? Like what are the different values that the customer gets or benefits the customer gets with the multi-geo? I thought let's take a step back and look at how multi-geo is typically done today. So let me quickly walk you through what this flow will look like. So here I have location in Canada, Europe, as well as Australia and Japan as well. Now as you can see, I'm going to kick that video going. Here we go. As you can see in the Office 365 multi-geo, you can expand the tenant into multiple geos, including some regions as well as countries. However, in a typical SharePoint on-premises environment, setting up a multi-geo environment is like you have a data silos in New York, USA, perhaps London in UK as well. Things like sharing, taxonomy, search, and profile, managing that across the geos, it's definitely an extensive and a resource-intensive operation. So you end up creating these data silos. And because of that, your employees across the geos will have a hard time collaborating as well. Now with Office 365 multi-geo, you have a single tenant. That is the fundamental important piece I want you to internalize. It's a single enterprise tenant that is able to attach to multiple geographic locations. Now enough me talking. To get more benefits around this multi-geo, I thought it would be good to have actually a customer who has deployed multi-geo, and I've been using it for almost 12 months now. So please allow me to welcome John from Chevron. Hey, John.
Hello.
So John, why don't we start with what is Chevron? I think many of you know already what Chevron is, as well as what's your role in Chevron.
Okay. Yeah, Chevron is a multinational energy company, and we're headquartered in California, but we have a presence in about 180 countries around the world. And so that poses a lot of interesting scenarios that we'll talk about. I work in the IT organization within Chevron, and specifically right now I'm focused on information management. And so that's why we talked earlier about deploying labels through MIP. That's my primary focus right now. But in a previous life, I managed the team that was responsible for the SharePoint farms on-premise.
Awesome, awesome. And why don't you maybe share with us deploying on-premises forms, especially to meet these in-country regulatory controls, and how easy, perhaps how difficult it was to manage some of those forms?
Yeah, so when we had on-premise SharePoint farms, we had to have a couple farms in a few of our locations because we have like partnerships with government organizations, and they had regulations where data had to stay in country, and so that was a problem because we'd have to have these farms in these remote locations where we didn't have the resources, the technical resources. It was difficult to bring in folks there because we're not always in the big cities.
Big cities, yeah.
A lot of times we're in some remote locations, and so that was a big challenge. And we moved our North America farms into the cloud, and we had to kind of do a workaround in the short term by deploying SharePoint farms in these remote locations. So this was the answer to what we were looking for.
Great, great. And also in Chevron today, how many geolocations that you have enabled? I believe you enabled in Europe and Asia Pacific as well?
Right, right. Well, it's Africa and in Asia.
Asia as
Yeah.
well, I see.
Yeah.
Perhaps in the next 3 to 5 years, like, where do you see the growth of Chevron, and then how this sets up you for the future growth as well? Because not only today you have 3 geos, perhaps in the future you may need need for additional geos in the future as well.
Right. Yeah. That's to be seen right now.
Yeah.
We don't know, but certainly there's a lot of interest in that going forward. So.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you very much, John, for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Okay. So it's truly, just to recap what John was pointing out, meeting your data residency needs is the first and foremost benefit that you get by going and deploying multi-geo. Many countries, like I said, Canada, Japan, Australia, UK, and so on, are now coming up with the stricter data regulatory controls on keeping their data, their citizens' data, in their own region or in the country itself. So deploying in multi-geo is a great answer for that. The second and foremost thing is, as John was alluding to, in the future, as the need for additional geos is growing, you are actually set for the future as well. As the company is growing into additional subsidiaries, let's say you need to open up a subsidiary in France, and guess what? We have a satellite location in France as well. So we have many, I think about 10 geolocations that we support today, and we do expect that the list will increase as we increase the footprint of Office 365 data centers. The other important aspect is empowering your users, no matter whether they are central headquartered users or they are satellite subsidiary users. They all get this modern productivity experience with search across the geos itself, which is going to be one of the experience we are going to show you in the demos. Last but not least, achieving the notion of one enterprise collaboration experience for all your employees, no matter where they are residing, be it in the headquarters or in the subsidiaries itself. Now let's dive into the evolution of multi-geo. So we announced OneDrive and Exchange multi-geo general availability back in April 2018, almost a year ago. And at that time, we had 7 geos supported, namely North America, EMEA, Asia Pacific. Those are the 3 regions. And then we had Canada, Japan, Australia, and UK. Those are the 4 countries that we supported at that time. And then fast forwarding to Q4 of calendar 18, we announced a selective preview for SharePoint multi-geo. And then also, in addition, we added our geo's footprint to India, France, and South Korea as well. The point I'm trying to make here is it's not about just the technology functionality, but also the global subsidiaries that you are able to grow your company as well. So we keep adding additional geos as we expand our Office 365 data centers. And we also did additional work on providing you a nice reporting for Office 365 geos, where the users are located in your Office 365 tenant itself. Here is a full list of all the geos that are supported, and also what are the new geos that to be launched. South Africa and UAE is our next 2 geos that we are planning to add support in the satellite geolocation itself. Now, one thing I do want to call out, when we announce a new Office 365 data center, let's say in the case of South Africa, it may immediately become available for that local users. It might take a month or 2 before it becomes part of the multi-geo support itself, because we have to do additional work to ensure that the satellite geo, that geo is now capable of being added as a satellite geo as well. Okay? So just a point to be noted. The other thing, as I mentioned, Exchange and OneDrive is available right now as part of the general availability, as part of one of the Office 365 multi-geos queue itself. With that, I'm thrilled to announce, as of this week, we have actually made SharePoint Online Multi-Geo generally available. And if you wanted to learn more, you can click on aka.ms/multi-geo, and that will have all the information about how to get onboarded to some of these geolocations, this particular multi-geo deployment, as well as what are some of the upcoming geos and additional information as well. Okay, I'll stay there for a minute if anyone wants to take a picture. So what is SharePoint Online Multi-Geo? What is it different from the existing OneDrive and Exchange Multi-Geo that we have? So you remember the slide that I showed you very beginning, where as a Contoso credit bank, I have central location in North America. I have a satellite location in Europe and Australia. With SharePoint Online Multi-Geo, we have enabled the SharePoint capabilities for your satellite locations. So for example, in Europe, I have now able to get additional SharePoint capabilities as well. Same thing in Australia. Also, I can get SharePoint functionalities, which means I can now create team sites in that particular satellite geolocation, as well as if I wanted to collaborate with other geolocation users from a team site in that satellite location, I can do that as well. And if I want to hubify that particular site in satellite location to the central location hub, I can do that as well. So all the functionalities that you can think of in SharePoint Online world is now available in the satellite location as well. If you are already deployed multi-geo, for example, like Chevron already have deployed, and when they add a net new geolocation, it's from the ground up, it will be having full functionality of SharePoint and OneDrive as well, in addition to Exchange. Okay? Now, enough talking. Let's actually get and see some demos. How many of you are interested in seeing some demos? Yeah? Okay. Let's actually switch to the global admin and a SharePoint admin role. Here I am in the modern admin UX for SharePoint Online. There is a new tab here for geolocations. So let me zoom it in for you. So once your tenant is enabled for multi-geo, this is the first thing you will notice, that there's a new advanced tab available for you called geolocations. All things about managing multi-geo, you do it under this particular one tab. Okay? Now here I am showing you that central location is North America. I have a location in Europe as well as Asia Pacific. So it immediately tells me what are the geolocations that my tenant is now extended to. Now let's say my credit bank is expanding the subsidiary to Australia as well. So let me go ahead. How do I add a location? Simply click on the add location, select Australia, and then you can see the list of available options right here. So these are the additional countries that I can now additionally add satellite locations to, right? Again, this list will grow as we add more support in this multi-geo capability. I'm going to click next, and I'm going to pick the namespace for this. So let me go ahead and select Contoso Bank, Europe, and in this case, Australia. Now the important point here is, if you noticed, I always suffix with a 3-letter acronym. It's EUR for Europe, AUS for Australia, FRA for France. That's a very important point. So what it does is, it actually tells you, just by looking at the site URL or a URL of the document, where that content is residing. And this is the nomenclature we recommend, so that by just looking at the URL, you as a user or an compliance admin or an auditor can immediately see or know where that location of the content is. So I'm going to go ahead and click add here, and as you can imagine, it's going to create this new satellite location, and it's going to basically synchronize all the user accounts from my central tenant, single tenant, and it already notified me by email saying it has kicked off creation of the new satellite locations. I'm going to click off this. Now let me switch gears to one of the satellite location that I have. So here I have Europe as a satellite location. So I'm going to switch here. Each geolocation has its own administration center. So here, for example, I'm in Europe. The way you see that is by looking at all the way at the top, you can see I'm in Europe. If I want to switch to other geolocations, I simply select that list. Let me zoom it in for you. And you can just click on the link to go to whichever geolocation that you want to manage. So because I'm in the European geolocation here, so if I go back to the active sites location, you can see all the satellite location, all the sites that are available for me in this satellite location. If as an admin I want to create a site in the Europe location, I simply click create and then create a site in that particular satellite geo. The other important point is because you have a per geo admin center, you can also have per geo policies for that geolocation itself. For example, think about your sharing policies. So here I am in the European Admin Center Sharing tab. As you can see, I'm allowing full external sharing for SharePoint, but I have disabled the external sharing for OneDrive because my European Union regulatory control may actually ask me to reduce the external sharing for my OneDrive, for example. So this shows you, based on your regulatory needs on that particular country or region, you may be able to configure a specific policy as well. To take it one step further, if I wanted to configure a specific list of partner domains just for my European collaboration, I can do that as well. So here is the list of domains that I have configured that are allowed for external collaboration from all the sites in Europe location, be it SharePoint site or OneDrive sites. Because that way now you have kind of a boundary around that location and manage all the policies and settings within that geolocation as well. The one other aspect I would call out, I think I mentioned this in our keynote as well. We have a new feature called external users. You can automatically revoke access for them as well. How many of you have heard about this throughout this week? Yeah? So that particular feature is also available for all these satellite users too. So by setting up that kind of enterprise-wide policy, not only your central location users, but also all the rest of your enterprise is now getting benefit as well. So you can configure per geo policies, like sharing policies, or you can also configure enterprise-wide security policies as well. Similarly, how many of you use Office 365 DLP, data loss prevention policies? Yeah? When you configure DLP policies, you can also target a given DLP policy is for that specific geolocation site as well. So imagine that you have a UK financial data policy. When you create that, you can target to the site collections and OneDrives in the UK location itself. So that's how powerful and flexible is this particular multi-geo capabilities for you in this location. Okay? Next up, I'm going to go one step further. Taxonomy. How many of you have deployed in SharePoint on-prem taxonomy in your enterprises and then synchronizing them across your enterprises? Or at least, let's start with how many of you have deployed a taxonomy, yeah? Keep your hands up if you really love maintaining that synchronization across all your geos. Yeah? Is it awesome? It's a pretty complex and resource-intensive operation. I'm happy to announce that by deploying multi-geo, taxonomy replication across all the geos, it automatically happens. For example, here I am in my North America taxonomy term store. You're all very familiar with this. I have investment banking, which is one of the term set that I have. I also have small businesses is another enterprise term set as well. And I have configured some term sets like mutual funds, portfolio, and securities, as well as business accounts, equity loans, and micro lending, right? These are the term sets that I have configured in my central location taxonomy store, okay? Now, let me switch to my European location. So here I am in the European location. Now, just to show you that I'm actually indeed in a European location, let me get out of my full screen mode. I'm going to focus on the URL itself, and you can see right here, that's the URL that I'm in right now, which is the term store serving off of the European location. Look at the URL, Contoso Bank Corp EUR. So EUR tells me that I am in the European admin center. That means the taxonomy term store that I am seeing is actually served from the European geolocation. Now, if you look at the list of terms that I have available here, For example, I have the same investment banking, mutual funds, portfolio, and securities, and I have the same small businesses taxonomy term set as well. So in other words, whatever you yes, go for it. Whatever you have configured and managed in your central location is automatically get replicated into all the satellite locations of your tenant, including the one I just created, the Australia one that I just created. It will also automatically get the same list of term sets as well. So behind the scene, we ensure that the central location taxonomies are always getting replicated into all the geos. Now, we also give you the flexibility. Let's say for that particular geo, let's say in Australia, you want to have your own term store because it pertains to the Australian regulatory control. You can still create the local geo-specific term sets as well. The only thing is those term sets will not be replicated everywhere because they are meant for that local geo term sets alone. Make sense? So in other words, you are operating as a real true one enterprise, but at the same time without giving up any control on your local country needs as well. You guys like it? Yeah? Yeah, feel free to. Can I take a question at the last if you don't mind? Because we have lots of demos to show. Yeah? Okay. I'll definitely make sure there is time at the end for it. The next thing I wanted to briefly mention is search. You know the beautiful part about search is I have nothing to show you from admin perspective because it just automatically works. Meaning it works across the geo. If I have a content in North America, I have a content in Europe, and I have a content in Australia, right? If an end user goes and searches for a term, it will actually retrieve the results from all the 3 different geolocations and then rank them, unify them together, provide a single relevance results to the end user. Just out of the box, as a multi-geo tenant, you will get that single cross-geo search results as well. How many of you have deployed hybrid search, connecting from on-prem to the cloud? Yeah? So you know how hard it is to connect 2 environments from on-prem to the cloud and then trying to bring the results so that a unified search and so on, right? Now in this particular case of multi-geo deployment, remember I have multiple geolocations. We did the hard work of bringing all the results together and then showing the end user the single enterprise search. However, at the same time, the index, the search index, still resides in the local geolocation. So it goes back to the data residency point that I made earlier. My North America contents index still resides in North America. My European contents index will reside in Europe itself. So you're able to meet that local data residency need. However, we have built that experience computation layer so that we can get the index results based on the term that the user is searching for, provide the single unified search results. The last but not least is around profile. Again, I have nothing up for showing in the admin configuration. Why? It just automatically works as well. If you are a North America user, your profile is homed in North America. If you are a European user, your profile is homed in Europe geolocation itself. And under the hood, we connect them together in terms of federated directory and then provide you the experience. Now, with all that said, it's probably better shown as an end user experience. So I'm going to ask Adriana, who's our small business specialist from European subsidiary, to show us how the end user experience looks like for a multi-geo tenant.
All right, so many of you might be familiar with the SharePoint homepage. And one of the things that you will notice in a multi-geo tenancy is that when I am in the SharePoint homepage, I can go ahead and scroll and see the results that are relevant to me, regardless of whether those results are hosted in my country or in any of the geolocations that I have access to. So here's a little bit of results here that I am having from Europe, as well as US banking campaigns. The same is true for the rest of the features in SharePoint Home. So any of the sites that I frequent will be showing up regardless of whether they are placed in my home location or in any of the other geolocations, following recent as well as suggested. Now, as many of you, I often have to create sites. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a team site. In my case, I will create a merger team site. And I'd like to point out that as I am creating the team site, one of the things that happens is that this creation request is already routed to the location that I belong to. So here, where the URL is being formatted, you can see that this is hosted out of Contoso Bank EUR, and that is because I am a European user. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a site quickly. Also, I can add, so I'll add myself as a user, and then I am going to add some of my colleagues. So I'm just going to add Christine. And Christine is one of my colleagues from France. I will be adding Bob as well, who is from Australia, and Sesha, who we now know is our admin in North America. Again, this is enabling me to pick the users in my tenancy, my coworkers, regardless of whether these coworkers are located in my geo or elsewhere. One of the things that I can also do with my sites is that I can join them to hubs. In this case, I am going to go ahead and join my site to a hub that is the Contoso Work hub. And the Work at Contoso hub is located in North America, and I'll show you that in a second once I navigate to the hub. All right, so here you can see at the top that my site is immediately inheriting the hub navigation, and my hub already has a couple of sites that are in Europe as well as my central location site. But I'm just gonna go all the way up to my hub homepage, and I will zoom on the URL for you once more so that you can see that this is in Contoso Bank Corp, which is the home region for my particular tenant. As Sesha mentioned, there is no configuration on their side for search, and as an end user, I get the benefit of being able to search across my geos. So I'm just gonna go ahead and search for banking. And then here I can see results, again, regardless of the geolocation where the relevant content is in. Here I have a couple of results, just right at the top. You can see one is from Contoso Bank Corp, that contains the banking, as well as Contoso Bank Corp EUR. Also, I can search for metadata terms. Again, metadata is replicated, so if I have any documents that are tagged, such as mutual funds, which is one of the tags that Sesha was showing earlier, I can go ahead and search for that particular tag and see the documents that are tagged regardless of where those documents are hosted. Going back to my hub, I can also, of course, go into any of my libraries and go ahead and tag documents. I'm just going to go ahead into Contoso in my European location and just navigate to my documents library. And I will just do a quick edit here. I can select any taxonomic term that is available. In this case, I have a banking term, and I am going to link it up. Again, the mutual. And in this case, this is my European site, so I'm just going to want to use the mutual banking Europe term. And I will go ahead and associate it. All right. The same is true for my mobile experiences, so I'm just going to go ahead and show you a little bit of that experience with regard to search.
4?
3. So here I just have my SharePoint mobile client. If you recall from what I showed you in my SharePoint Home experience, I also can view news. In this case, here's some news from my European location, as well as US bank events. Same is true, I can perform a search, and of course I can see my colleagues regardless of their geolocation, as well as my frequent sites. And I'll just go and search for mutual funds. I just had a search early on. And here again, I can see the documents in this search is showing me anything that is in all my geolocations. All right, so that is a little bit of the user experience. And now back to you, Sesha.
All right. So the key point I want to land is, from an end user perspective, they don't have to know that they're actually working in a multi-geo tenant, right? It just behind the scene, it's transparent for the end user. It automatically works, creates the sites in the appropriate location. From a search experience perspective, they get the unified results, including the taxonomy terms, as I showed you, managed in the central location, is available for the satellite user as well. She's now getting the same experience in that regard as well. And then also it ties with your search experience. So you can search by your taxonomy term, regardless of where your content lives. Now you're able to get them in a single location itself. Now, just to recap on what we have shown in the demo, from an admin perspective, I showed you how easy it is to create a geolocation. You can manage the sites on a per geo basis, as well as the sharing policies can be configured on a per geo basis. Search index is per geo. However, the experience for the end user is across the geo. You get a single unified results. The user profiles are also managed at the home geo location. For example, in this case, Adriana is a European user. That means her profile is actually homed in the European geolocation itself. Last but not least, taxonomy is centrally managed and it is automatically replicated across all your satellite location itself. Now, from the end user perspective, even though Adriana is the satellite user, she's getting the full modern experiences like your central location user. And then there is no overload for the end users to know that they're working on a multi-geo. They just come to the regular site like any other users, and then they get their work done. And most importantly, all these capabilities exist for their mobile experience as well. Let's go a little bit step further, behind the scenes, how we made all these things happen. Are you guys interested in seeing how it all happened behind the scene? Yeah? A little bit? I didn't see a lot of hands going up. So I don't know whether I should spend. Okay, perfect. Thank you. 2 hands, perfect. Okay, so let's talk about how we actually made all these things work. Here's the basic 4 premises: sharing, search, profile, and taxonomy. Those are the 4 major complex environments, as you all know from the SharePoint perspective. So what we have done is you have a single tenant, which is in the Azure Active Directory represented there. And that tenant information is what we call worldwide replicated. And that means any satellite location that I spin off, I will be able to synchronize that information to that satellite location. That's why we call it is worldwide available for you. Also, if you are a satellite user signing in to access your central location user, we need to give them a single sign-on experience, and hence that information needs to be available there as well. So from a directory perspective, as you can see at the top, it's a single Azure Active Directory tenant instance that you see. Then we synchronize them to our directory on the corresponding geos. On the left, you are seeing North America geo. That's where the directory information is there, followed by all the user information. This is where we keep all of our, including satellite users information, just the basic information, like what is the user. When Adriana was showing us, in the people picker, when she types in Bob, who's an Australian user, it still resolves the user and then show her the nice experience so that she can pick the user Bob, right? The way that works is because we actually have that information synchronized to that cached into the local directory itself. That's how that information is available. Same thing, if an Australian user trying to share with the user in US, same thing will happen. You will be able to pick the user right away as well, okay? Next thing I'm going to say is, let's say in the context of search, you have a unified search results across the geos. However, as the picture shows, the index is kept in the corresponding geo itself. So there's an index in North America, there's an index in Europe. If I have any other satellite location, it will also be there as well. We did the computational layer to bring the results from each of the geo indexes and then show the end user a unified search results. Next up, on the profile services, each user who is homed in a given geo, his profile is kept inside the geo. For example, things like skills of the user, roles that they play in the user. Those kind of information that you keep in the user profile, they're all kept in the home geo of the user itself. However, to retrieve that profile information, we have done the federated directory abstraction is what we call it. So in other words, if I am a US user, Sesha, and I want to know the profile information of the user Adriana, who happens to be in the Europe, we do the proxy call into the European location, retrieve the information, and then show it to Sesha. But the actual information is mastered and kept inside the Europe location because that's where Adriana is homed. Okay? Last but not least, a taxonomy. As I said, it's available in the central location. You can manage them. However, we do the replication to all the satellite locations. No matter how many satellites you have, all the information will get traced. So now I have built out this slide, so you can take a picture of it and tweet it. This is probably one of the fundamental SharePoint architecture behind the scene. And also all the taxonomy we just talked about is very hard to set up in the on-prem. But wait, if you are still using BCS, Secure Store Service, Reporting Service, all those other services that you probably are aware of, they all continue to be per geo only. So there is no notion of cross geo on some of those services. Okay? So if you have to have connections for your BCS connection, make sure you configure them in all the geos that you are managing them. Okay, so that's the behind the scene architecture for SharePoint Online Multi-Geo. You guys like it? Yeah? Okay. Let me go one step further. It's all looking great. sounds like pretty hard problem, but you guys figured it out, we solved it, you may think. But there is still $1 million question remains. Any guesses on what that question is? Yes? Yes, yes. Was that language? That's a close guess.
I was going to say, I always thought about
Performance. Location.
hoping that performance is figured out.
Performance will be better, of course, when you keep the data closer to the user, of course. But this is not a performance solution per se. This is meant for data residency itself. The question is really around, yes, you have sites across the board, but can I move a site across the geos, right? Because now that we have the capability of keeping sites in multiple geolocations, you may wonder, well, what if my project changed and my data residency changed, and I need to move this project from Europe location, North America location to Europe location, or from Australia to Europe location, right? Yeah? So, the answer is, yes, you can. Yes, you can move the site. And it's actually very simple to trigger the site move as well, which is start SPO site content move. That's really the commandlet that you have to run to say, here is my source site that I have in North America, and here is the destination location, which is basically the single parameter that you are specifying, saying, I want the site to be moved to my Europe location. Now remember the 3-letter acronym I talked about beginning, that's exactly what you are specifying here. In this case, I'm saying EUR, that means I want this to be in the European location. If you want that site to be in Australia, you would say AUS for Australia, and we have it documented. So you just follow that 3-letter acronym and then specify it in this parameter, you're all set to go. Yeah, you guys like it? You want to see it in action? Sure? Okay, let's take it in action. Why don't we go ahead and set up the demo. Before I show the demos, here is the quick view. So I'm going to move a site from North America, which is a site called eTrading. And once I moved, you will see that location, the site is getting moved into the Europe location. The URL of the site will move into the European URL. So let's take a look at it in the demo. So here I'm going to act as the collab administration, and then Adriana is continued to act as the small business specialist. So let me go ahead here. So I'm going to, as a global and SharePoint admin, I'm going to trigger the move for a site eTrading, and let me zoom it in here for you. So you can see there is a SPO, start SPO site content move is the site move that I'm going to trigger. I'm setting the destination location to be EUR, okay? Because I want to move the site from North America to the European location. All right, let me go ahead and kick off the move. I misspelled the data location. Here we go. So with that one commandlet, it's going to prepare the site for the move itself. And let me actually zoom this one for you so that you can see it, what other things happens here. So you see that site is coming from the source eTrading into the European location. So you can see the EUR at the end, the URL. So it says the source data location is North America going into Europe, and we have a move state progress 1 out of 4. So that means there are 4 major steps in moving the site from one location to the other location. We are on the first step. That's how I'm showing it here. Now, if I wanted to know for a given move, what is the current state, because these things will take some time to move the site over to the other geolocation, we have a commandlet called get SPO site and content move state. So once you trigger the move, after that, you can query this particular commandlet to know the status of the move itself. So let's actually go and run this commandlet for the site I just moved, and let's see what the current status is. Let me go ahead and do the F5. Here we go. So it looks like it now went in and started to the second step, which is the step for backing up the site from the target, from the source location, and then getting it prepared into the target location itself. Now, in the meantime, what I'm going to do is quickly have Adriana walk us through what the flow is going to look like, so that we'll give a minute for the site to complete. Adriana, you want to walk through this one?
Yeah, sure. All right. So the first step in our site move is, of course, your initial state. Your move has not yet started. Then, as Sesha just showed you, you are doing the start SPO, site content move. That is your commandlet. Now, every single move has several stages. So once the move begins, what we do is that we take a, well, my clicker is not working.
I can do it.
Yeah, just like scroll through. So once the move begins, we take a backup of the site, that is a backup in the source location of the site, and then we perform a restore in the destination location of the site. Next up, in that part of the restore, we do what are smart gestures. So the smart gestures are special signals that we send to the service so that the service can adapt to the URL change. Because as you know, we have certain things that are quite URL dependent. For instance, if you have your sync client is synchronizing to the URL in North America. However, it needs to know to gracefully disconnect and synchronize to the URL in Europe. We've now moved the site to a different farm. We also do the updates to the Office most recently used files. So if you have an Office client and you have that list when you open, it says your recent files. Well, those files also get updated via a special signal that we send to the client. The same is true for the OneDrive notebook. So we also have a particular header that the notebook utilizes to now synchronize into the new location. So none of your experiences are broken. Again, we do also publish bags into our O365 groups ecosystem, and we also perform updates to the mobile client. So if you're using your SharePoint OneDrive mobile client, all of these clients are also aware that the site has moved. All right, so next phase.
Cleanup.
Yep. So then in the cleanup phase, what we do is that we go into our source location and we remove the site that was there, so we perform the cleanup, and that site is getting replaced by a redirect site. So what this means is that if you shared a URL, or if somebody had copy-pasted the URL at some point in time in an old email, whatever the case may be, or you have a bookmark, when you hit the old URL, you are automatically redirected to the new URL. And then our last stage is just the finalization of the move. So we go into the last stage to let you know that the move has completed, and we provide you the stage 404 and then move success. So that is essentially the stages. And I think this move probably completed quite quickly. So
now,
let me switch
the last,
up.
let's go to switch and show it. Yeah.
All right, so just gonna type in, we move e-trading. So I have the old URL for the e-trading site. It happened very quickly, but I typed the old URL, and now you can see that it refreshed, being in Contoso EUR, which is the new URL of the site. Right?
Yeah, you guys like it? So just pause there for a minute. What just happened is the command that I triggered to move the US site to the Europe, it actually got moved over. And that's why you see the new URL. And now Adriana is going to show us a couple of other experiences where it actually got updates that move as well. Yeah,
so Sesha had shared with me a link to the e-trading site that has the old URL. Hopefully you can see it at the bottom. And it is Contoso in the North America location. However, when I click on my file, I am automatically redirected to the new location of the file. And one of the other things that I mentioned as I was explaining the stages in the smart gestures is our client. So here I'm just going to open my PowerPoint desktop client, and I am going to go ahead and visit my e-trading site. Let's see. And of course, I can open my presentation. Again, that is because we performed the smart gesture of updating the Office ecosystem with the new URLs for the files. All right. Okay. Thank you, Sesha.
All right. Thank you very much. So it's not about just moving the site. It is also about giving you the experience that for the end users to be able to have a seamless experience so that they don't have to know the site got moved over. Of course, you do have to let them know as part of the data residency and project management saying this project is being moved over to the other location. And also, there could be some cases where you have a deep links in your documents. So there are some caveats where you do have to let them know that site is in this new location. But for the most part, things like sync client, most recently used items, as well as the links that you have sent to them in the past, all those, 80% of those cases will just work based on the work that we have done here. Now, the next $1 million question is, I'm always asking a $1 million question, yeah? Yes, guess. Moving a user, okay. So that is actually not $1 million. It's probably less than that.
250,000.
The answer is yes, you can. So the same commandlet that I showed you for site move, there's another commandlet called start SPO user and content move. And let's say Sesha is moving from US to Europe. You first change his data location to Europe, which is EUR, and then you run that commandlet start SPO user and content move and say move Sesha's OneDrive, destination location is EUR. And that will trigger the move for Sesha's OneDrive as well.
And we do all the smart gestures that we do for site as well for the user.
But my question here really was, I think many of you have seen this already. Can I rename a site that is actually in a satellite geolocation? Right? How many of you have seen the demo at the keynote of the renaming a site? You loved it? Yeah? Many of the things that you saw there is actually built off of this multi-geo tech, move tech that I just showed you, which is we move a site and then we took care of making sure the old links work, make sure the sync line works, make sure the recently used work. And that's exactly the same foundation we used to give you the feature of site rename. So that you can rename a site, not only you just rename it, but the basic functionalities like redirect, the old links are continuing to work and sync line continues to work, we are able to give you that capability as well. So let me actually quickly show you in a satellite geolocation. A site lives in the satellite geolocation, I'm going to rename that kind of site, okay? So here I am logged in as the administrator for my European location. So you can see at the top that I'm in the Europe location. And I'm going to pick a site, I believe it's emerging markets in Europe. And this site is in the Europe location. It's a communication site. So let me go ahead and open up the property pane for that. And to rename the URL, I'm going to click on edit the site address. So it's going to let me change the address. So let's change this one to emerging markets in EU, for example. Okay, so that's the change, and that's the address is available for me, so I can go ahead and rename the site address. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save, and it is asking me, do I want to change the site name as well, which is the display name for the site. For this demo purposes, I think I don't need to do that, so I'm going to click No. So what it is doing now is it's updating the URL of that site from emerging markets in Europe to emerging markets in EU. Now, while it is updating that, well, pretty quick, it's already done, updating that particular URL. Now, let me actually go ahead and showcase here. So you can see that URL is emerging markets in EU. But rather than me as the admin clicking on that link and showing you that it works, I'm going to ask Adriana as a user who has links, old links to that old site, as well as other experiences, how that works in her experience, okay?
All right. So here I just have the old URL already set up in my browser. So I'm just going to hit enter. The same would be if I have a bookmark. Immediately, you can see that the site name resolved to emerging markets EU. And if I had an old link, again, going with our smart gestures, Sesha shared with me an older link here earlier today before the site got renamed. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up the site. Oh, just 1 second. There we go. Go ahead and open up the site, and that site is resolving to the new URL, which is the emerging markets EU URL. And I'll just zoom that quickly for you so that you can see it. So there you go.
All right, cool. You guys like it? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the little bit of roadmap items. So I showed you the evolution, how we evolved from OneDrive Exchange Multi-Geo, adding more geolocations, and now we are announcing this week the SharePoint Multi-Geo general availability as well. In addition, there are going to be 2 more geos we are planning to support in the upcoming quarters, specifically calling out South Africa and UAE. Those are the additional 2 geos that we are looking at adding as well. So with that, just to recap, we talked about what is multi-geo, and John was here to talk about why is multi-geo important for Chevron-like customers, which is really data residency is the primary reason why multi-geo really helps you there. We talked about how we have evolved our story for multi-geo, including starting with SharePoint and OneDrive and Exchange, and now we have SharePoint capabilities available. And we showed a lot of cool demos, including how you can add a satellite geolocation, how you can even move a site from one geo to the other geo, and then finally, how you can even rename a site in the satellite geolocation as well. So hope you guys all liked it. Again, I want to finish with thanking you all who is participating in all of our SharePoint Saturday community events. And I myself is participant of that SharePoint Saturday event as well. This is the picture from the one I did in Vancouver, BC, Canada. So I encourage you to participate. That's the great forum to learn, even on a weekly basis, what's happening in this SharePoint community. Okay? So with that, I will thank you very much. And here is the QR code, or location where you can learn more about multi-geo, and I will open up for questions. Okay? Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.